Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while. I've been kind of keeping you guys in the dark on some of the stuff I've been doing with the car. It's been like, well, probably 2 weeks now or so that I made a video. The last video we had the engine pulled out. I was tearing it down, looking at the damage and everything. So I haven't really videoed much of what's been going on the past couple of weeks, but there's been a lot of changes that are happening and have happened to the car. I'm gonna go over all that stuff in this video with you guys and catch y'all up and let you guys know what's going on. So out here in the garage, car's right here, so we'll go ahead and look at the car, and we'll look at a pretty big surprise on what all. There's a lot of stuff that's changing. So I'm gonna catch you guys back up right now. Once I got the engine torn down, I did notice that the cylinder walls in the old block were gonna have to be rehomed for new piston rings. While the engine was down, I figured it's probably best to go ahead and put new rings and everything in it. Well, with putting new rings in it, or holding the cylinder walls, it was going to make the piston to wall clearance too much. So I hadn't told you guys about this, but I had a Nemec block that's been sitting on my shelf over here for a while. I had a friend bring me an old 3-valve engine by, and I tore it down the driveway a couple months ago, and was able to salvage this Nemec block. So for you guys that don't know, the Nemec block is very similar to the WAP. It's pretty much the same design, but it's stronger in a lot of areas. And the defining characteristic on this, the difference on a Nemec that you can tell from a WAP, is the casting number, and then the Nemec block has this symbol here on it. And just looking at this thing and from what I've read about it, so Ford claims this is like the strongest aluminum block produced. There's a lot of argument out there on what's stronger, this or the Texas, but either way, this is stronger than the WAP block. Not worried at all. I'm pretty excited to upgrade to this, but just visually looking at it, the block does have a lot of extra webbing here in the pan rail area, and there's some stuff that's a little different. Like, you can tell the casting on this block is a lot better than the WAP. Whenever they decked the WAP block last time, there was like some porous spots in the aluminum on the deck surface. This one's been decked, it's nice and clean. So this one's been honed and decked. My good friend Devin Grace hooked me up on this. Machine shops around here are backed up like crazy, and he was able to help me out. So we took 7/1000ths off the deck surface and bored and honed the cylinder walls to my old pistons here. And we, like same as my last motor, I set the piston to wall at 4/1000 5/10. Works pretty good for these things. So that's all set. So my whole rotating assembly is ready to go back into the block. I don't have piston rings yet. I'm waiting on those. So today I am going to put the crank back in. I got a fresh set of King HPs. I've already measured my clearances. Everything checks out good. Got about 2/3 roughly on the main bearing clearance, which is right where I like it. So that's going to go back in. So while all this was down, I decided to make some changes to the car. So I'll go ahead and show you what all has happened over here. So let me show you guys the old turbo kit. I did decide to redo the turbo kit. I was going to have to anyways, because I was going to keep this under wraps, but I'm just bad at and terrible at holding secrets. And I mean, honestly, me telling you guys this isn't going to give me any kind of, isn't going to be detrimental to me. So I went to a no prep race while the car was down, and to be honest with you, the cars that I saw out there would have kicked my butt. So I knew there was a couple things that were lacking on the car from no prep stuff, and one of those was that the engine sat too far forward in the chassis. So I had like a good 1.25 inches that I could move the engine back still. So I went ahead and I cut the motor plate tabs out, and I slid the engine back about 1 inch to 1.25 inches, and it's sitting back about as tight as you can get one of these against the firewall. So if you think about it, you're shifting pretty much the largest mass in the car 1 inch rearward. So that should help on the no prep stuff. And it may make this thing even more of an animal now on prep, but honestly I'm really not that worried about it. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. If I have to hang weight off the front of the car, that's fine. I'll just stick some weight up here on these bars to keep the front end down. I plan to run more no prep and marginal prep stuff, so I would rather the car be geared for that than be geared for radial stuff when I hardly ever run on really sticky tracks. So since I moved the engine back, I was going to have to redo the turbo kit. And I'm going to be honest with you, the turbo kit that was on this thing was a hunk of junk. Like, I mean, it worked, but it was garbage. Here you can see Like it had all these like unnecessary bends in it, and the wastegate placement wasn't ideal, and it was MIG welded pretty badly. So I was making it work for a long time, but I was really unhappy with it. So I decided I was going to go ahead and do it right, and I redid. I haven't completely welded it up yet, but I have redone the turbo system, the hot side. So this stuff's just mocked up. It's kind of sitting there, but I cut the old V-band flanges off these CG Fab headers, and I put the Monkey Fab interlocking V-band flanges on it. I really like those. So I did that for both headers, and then I have redone the hot side in stainless, 304 stainless steel. It's all tacked up right now because I'm going to have to back purge weld it for it to be done right. But it is all mocked up. I've got my stuff here for my wastegate mock up as well. Had to get a little fancy right here with the pie cuts, but I really like this short amount of pipe instead of that monstrosity that was going on my old setup. There's so much more room here now. So that's another upgrade. Like, you know, it may not completely change the car like really noticeably, but when you start doing all these small things, they really add up. So you know, with that, the drive shaft's at the drive shaft shop right now. I had to have it shortened about 1.25 inches as well, because the transmission obviously is slid back in the car now. So I'm really interested to see how this engine move is going to help me. You know, not only that, like everything changes. Like my steering shaft doesn't clear now, so I got to clearance it to get it to fit past the header right there. I had engine limiters that were built to where the engine was at before, so now I got to cut those and shorten those. Like, it's pretty wild how much moving the engine back 1 inch changes everything. You have to completely redo everything. But overall, I'm really happy with how it's turning out so far. I also put these tabs in here for the motor plates that I never had before because I didn't know that's what they were for. So to make installing the engine a lot easier. This thing was a nightmare to install before. So that's where I'm at right now with this thing. Hopefully get the piston rings this week, and I'm gonna start file fitting the piston rings. But right now, I'm gonna get this crank cleaned up, get the bearings put in the block. I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed today. So it's basically, you know, I'm using my time wisely. So I'm gonna hop on that right now. So I get the crankshaft clean first. So here in my garage, this is my state-of-the-art cleaning system over here. Put some cardboard down in the driveway and hit the crank with some carb cleaner. Try to clean out all these passageways right here. Old passages, as long as those are clean, pretty good. So get this clean, and then I'll move on and get the bearings put in the engine. The crank looks pretty rough since I sprayed it off with carb cleaner, but they always look a little rough whenever you spray them off. They got to be micro polished again to look really pretty, but I'm not worried about it. So I got this this HVL a little while ago on a trip to Summit. Picked some of it up, so I'm gonna put some of this back on here and get it nice and clean back up. Got the main bearings pulled out, like always. I've told you guys this 1,000 times, I feel like, but there's the part number for the bearings. MB5283 HP. They're standard thickness. Got me the desired clearances I want. I always clean the front and back side of them with either some carb cleaner or some isopropyl alcohol, get them nice and dry. I do the same thing on the block side. I get it nice, clean, and dry. You don't want nothing between the bearing and the block. So I got those stuck in there. I'm gonna toss a bunch of this HVL on them, and I'm gonna sit the crank in there. Got the crank lubed up with some HVL, and the bearings are lubed up with HVL as well. And you just carefully sit this thing down in here. And don't turn it.
Why not? Oh, because the bearing will move?
Yeah, you don't want to turn it until you get the caps on and at least somewhat torqued down. And then this, I run the 2-piece thrust bearing, so I got to slide this between the thrust face and the crank and the block, so I'll coat it with some assembly lube, both sides of it. And then that, got to always make sure that the grooved ends face the crankshaft. and then you just put it on the crankshaft like that, and then let it go in between.
Oh, it's back there.
Yeah. Got the main studs in and the main caps in. Got my lube on all the nuts and the washers on here. And always have my instructions out to tell me what I'm torquing my main studs to. And then I got my sequence right here in my manual. And then one thing that I do to seat the thrust in these, because when you first put them in, you'll see that the crank will be kind of hard to turn. It's really easy to turn though, because I've already got the thrust seated. But what I do is I take this hammer and I hit the front of the crankshaft really hard, obviously harder than I'm doing right now, and I go back on the back side. And what it does is, when you hit it backwards, it pushes, because there's no thrust bearing on the top side of the front side of this right here. There's a thrust washer on the back side and then a thrust bearing on the cap. And so I want to try and push that cap back a little bit, so it's actually probably touching the crank before the bottom portion does, and then when I hit the crank back forward, it meshes the top and the bottom together and your thrust bearing is set. And then I'll also, once I get these torqued down some, before I torque any of these down, I'll pry the crankshaft forward with a pry bar or a screwdriver just to verify that I seat the thrust bearing. So I'm going to get torquing these things down, make sure it's set, and then I'll check the crankshaft in play once everything's torqued down and make sure that that's within spec. So now that the crank and everything's torqued up, I haven't put the side bolts in yet, but those don't really matter for thrust in play. I always like to check that before I put the side bolts in, and then if it's not right, I got to pull all the side bolts out too. So anyways, the way I do this, because it's an aluminum block, is I just use the magnetic base and put it on the snout of the crankshaft. It's a really strong magnet, so it doesn't move once it gets on there. And then I just put my gauge over here on the side of the block. And so what you do is you push the crank all the way back, and you set your dial indicator here to 0. And then if you got this thrust bearing seated right, you can move this crank with your hand, and you just pull the crank forward, and you want to watch and see what kind of in play you have. And right here looks like we've got about 8 thousandths crankshaft in play. Push that back, go back to 0. Try it one more time. Yep, so you're looking at right at 8 thousandths, which is perfect. That's generally what I'm shooting for, like anywhere between like 6 to 9 thousandths roughly. It seems to work out pretty well for me, so that's good. We know the crankshaft in play is good. The crank is spinning really smoothly. Let me take this off here real quick and show you how smooth the crank spins. Man, it's nice and smooth. It's not bad. I'm really happy with that though. Nice and smooth, nice and bound up, so I'm going to put the side bolts in. Side bolts are in and everything's torqued up, everything still spins nice and smooth. Everything's looking good, so I can put the rear main seal cover on, and that was kind of brought me into showing you guys what I got next. So I got a bunch of stuff from AccuFab. I got this upgraded trigger wheel, billet piece, really nice. Also got the AccuFab primary timing chains, and got this really nice one piece, or say one piece, they're all one piece, but billet rear main seal cover. I mean, is this needed? No, but it is really nice. It's not really that expensive, and it comes with the rear main seal pre-installed, which is nice. And then the biggest reason why I bought this is it comes with an O-ring seal here, so you're not having to put RTV all over the back of this thing. I hate it, and I always have issues with it sealing up right. So this is going to be nice. All I got to do is put the O-ring in it and bolt this on. So, and it comes with these nice ARP bolts and the O-ring, so I'm going to put that on next. Alright, so I'm about as far as I can get today on this short block for what I have. I got the oil pump back on. Everyone that's watched channel for a while knows that I run the 3-valve GT500 oil pump with the Boundary billet gears. That's on. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is I always run these upgraded pivot pins. They're an M8, so you gotta drill and tap the block for an M8 by 125. So I did that off camera. And those are in there ready to go. And then this backing plate's on here. This rear main seal, cover billet piece, AccuFab, really nice. Goes on nice. That seal in it's perfect. So hopefully no leaks from back here. Hopefully the heads get done pretty soon. I know Jordan's really busy, but hopefully get those soon. Also, I wanted to give a big shout out to Eddie Edwards. So Eddie hooked me up with one of his torque plates so we could get that done. So big thanks to Eddie for that. Other than that, there's really not much else. I'm hoping to be ready for Clarksville Cash Days, July 17th. If I get everything in time, I'll be able to get to it, but I don't know, I have a curse for that race for some reason. I miss it. I missed it 2 years in a row now. So, I don't know. Hopefully we get everything in time and I get this thing slammed back together and get it ready to go. So, I'm going to end this one here, guys. That's about all I got. Y'all stay tuned. I'll update y'all as soon as I get some more stuff for the car and can make some more headway on it. So, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I'll see y'all on the next one.